Hi everyone, welcome to Sports Insider. I'm Dan Labbe. He is Chris Fedor. Packed show as always for you today. We're going to talk Browns, Cavaliers. How about the Indians adding bats?
Yes.
Look at that. Let's get right to it though. Let's start with the Browns. Let's bring in Tom Reed, one of our Browns beat reporters. Tom, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Tom. It's Seattle week, and a lot of fans. Look, a lot of people are interested in this game. I don't think they think the Browns will win this game. At least I hope they don't. But they're interested to see what Johnny Manziel can do against that Seattle defense. Do you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's put together a couple of back-to-back decent performances. It hurts to obviously keep losing weapons like Brian Hartline, who was playing his best football when he got hurt. But yeah, you want to see progress, and you want to see him keep playing well. And this is as tough a test as you're going to get, especially on the road. And I know a lot of fans of Johnny Manziel were like, well, they need a big sample size so they can have a really good gauge of where the kid's at. But I tell you what, these last three games are really good tests for them.
Tom, if you go back to yesterday, Mike Pettine's comments about Russell Wilson, what do you think that was about? Where do you think those came from?
Yeah, that really didn't bother me. I think that my thought on it was, boy, you'll be missing these comments when you get the next Pat Shurmur here for 4 years. I don't know why he didn't just go full on like most coaches and just completely say how great Russell Wilson is. I thought his rating was, first of all, his comment now was 90% positive. The other 10% was, I don't really think he's that far off. I guess that most people would just say, just say he's the greatest guy ever. Usually Patton doesn't do that, and that's not the first example of that. He's trying to answer honestly.
Tom, I guess to play devil's advocate here, though, maybe there's a chance that Seattle looks at the Browns and looks at that record and overlooks them a little bit, and then Mike Pettin makes those comments, and obviously Russell Wilson gets asked about them a little bit later, and maybe now he's a little bit more locked in?
No, if you're worried about those comments, there's bigger problems than not having a running back this week. I think we as fans sometimes put too much stock into stuff like that, especially, it would be one thing if Pettin had said, he's a good quarterback, but he's young and he's got a lot to learn. Well, that's one thing. But this, to be put behind Ben Roethlisberger and Brady and who was it, Rodgers, that's pretty good company. I just don't think it was. I don't think that was as big. I don't think it's as big as some people are making it.
Tom, you bring up the running game in reference to Seattle. Obviously, they're looking for somebody. They signed Christian Michael. They bring back Bryce Brown. But the Browns have had their own issues in terms of running the ball up until last week against San Francisco. What did you see that was different in the game against the 49ers that the Browns couldn't do in the previous 12 games?
Well, I think we've got all speaking of Mike Pettin's comments, the other comment that I think was more inflammatory than the Russell Wilson comment was the San Francisco. And again, he was dead on. San Francisco just wasn't very good. To get back to the original question, I still think that they were that good. And that was a season high. They did a lot of good things running the football.
Tom, looking at these next three games, of course, Seattle, that's the one everyone's focused on, but they have to go to Kansas City. That's a tough place to play, Kansas City fighting for the playoffs. Then the Browns are going to face Pittsburgh at home, and that's essentially going to be a road game for the Browns. And Pittsburgh will be fighting for the playoffs and playoff positioning. So over these next three games, for this team and for Johnny, what are you watching?
Again, just to see him play well, try to win one of those games. I think that, it's the game that obviously for fans you want to see him try to win is the Pittsburgh game, especially if it really means something for Pittsburgh, and it probably will. They were just absolutely humiliated the last time they played in Pittsburgh. So we'll see if they can muster up a better challenge against them this time. It's going to be real tough though because of the secondary situation. But the thing right now, the thing that you want from Johnny is to keep scoring. I just have, the defense has struggled so much that they're not going to beat anybody 17-13. They're going to have to score points, and it's going to be fun to watch if he can do that.
Tom, you wrote about Josh Gordon. Johnny Manziel talked about Josh Gordon. Gordon himself was captured on video saying some things about growing up, wake-up calls, things along those lines. Where do the Browns stand when it comes to Josh Gordon? Or is it going to depend on what happens this offseason with whatever decision the Browns make when it comes to head coach and GM?
Yeah, I think you answered your own question there. That's obviously something that's going to come back to the front burner as soon as they decide if these groups going to stay, or they end up making, which I think a lot of us believe will be substantial changes. It'll be in the hands of those people to decide what to do with Josh Gordon. There's going to be teams I think that will trade for him, but there's my goodness, if you could just imagine him and Gary Barnidge and Travis Benjamin. That's a pretty good group to work with right there. And if Johnny ends up being the quarterback, we don't know that, of course, either. That's why these next 2 games are so important. But it's something to build on. It's certainly something better than what they've had here.
Tom, that being said, and we'll wrap it up with this. When you look at Josh Gordon, just take away the suspensions on the field last year. We saw him come back, have a really good game against Atlanta, and then he kind of disappeared. I don't know if he checked out or what. Is it realistic to count on this guy?
No, that's the down part of the whole thing. You just don't know. That's why it's such an intriguing and in some ways troubling situation for them, because from the football standpoint, you want to say he would be in a contract here. I think they never really figured out if he's got 2 years or 1 year, so he should be highly motivated. But it goes back to the whole thing with Johnny to a much larger degree because the league's involved. You just don't know if he's going to be there from week to week, and that's the scary thing with Josh.
All right, Tom, we appreciate the time.
Take care, guys.
Yeah, and when you look at Josh Gordon, it's real easy to fall for that talent. Mm-hmm. It's real easy to look at him and say, man, we know how good he can be. Mm-hmm. We look at him and we see an NFL wide receiver. But again, just along with the suspensions, you go back to last year. After that Atlanta game, it was just, where was the guy? Even when Johnny was starting a quarterback.
I guess you're hoping, if you're a Browns fan, that what happened with him in terms of his suspension was the wake-up call. And you don't know when it's going to happen. It's going to happen in different stages for different guys. Johnny Manziel talked about his wake-up call. Something that he needed to have happen was getting benched on Monday Night Football against Cincinnati, being relegated to the third-string quarterback. I think Browns fans right now are hoping that the same thing happened when it came to Josh Gordon missing all of this season. Sometimes when you take away football from somebody, it forces them to change. Who knows? Like you said, he's very, very difficult to count on. And I don't think the Browns should go into this offseason even thinking about him being a possible addition to the depth chart. Anything that they get from him moving forward, I think, should just be a bonus.
Yeah, for a guy like Gordon, you start missing those game checks. You start to notice that a little bit. Yeah. All right, let's shift gears and let's talk Cavaliers. They have a pretty big game tonight against the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll bring in our Cavaliers beat reporter, Chris Haynes. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing fine, guys. Thanks for having me on your wonderful show.
Absolutely. Chris, let's look back real quickly at the Celtics. Obviously the Celtics, they want to be considered one of the top teams in the East. You got to go after the Cavs in that case. How does this Cavaliers team view the Celtics?
Just as a little test, that little baby brother that keeps getting on your nerves, won't leave you alone, just keep nagging and nagging. That's the Celtics. Sooner or later, the Celtics are going to grow up and mature into a team better than what they are now. They're a good team, but I think right now they feel like the only advantage they have on the Cavaliers is that I think they feel like they can play physical with the Cavs, and they can be more physical than what the Cavs are accustomed to doing. With that being said, they just don't have the talent level, the depth and talent to be able to compete with the Cavs for 4 quarters. But they're definitely a test, and I think in the playoff situation, I think the Cavaliers, I wouldn't say they will want to avoid them, but, hey, if you can get by in the playoffs without having to go through them, I think that would benefit the Cavs, because the Celtics, they'll try to beat you up. If they're not going to get the win, they'll try to beat you up for the next opponent in the next round to get you.
And that's how the Celtics have to play, I think, because they don't have any elite-level talent, Chris. But in terms of how Boston views Cleveland, saying, hey, we've got to get tough with Cleveland, We've got to try and get in their head. We've got to be physical with them. Do you think that's how other teams around the NBA view the Cavs as well, as that being maybe a weakness moving forward?
No doubt. I wrote that in my game story after the Boston game. Is that's the view around the league, is that, hey, if you can rough the Cavs up, if you can get physical with them, if you can get into LeBron's head, Kevin Love's head, impose your will, then if you're a talented team down the stretch, you'll have a chance. You'll have a shot. The problem is LeBron James has been dramatically better for the last 3 or 4 years and playing physical himself. And so he can withstand that. It looks like he can, overcome that. Kevin Love and these other guys, Kyrie Irving, beating those guys up. We don't know. We don't know we don't know how they're going to respond to that. But that's definitely the scout report that's out in the Cavs. If you're a talented team and you want to have a chance to win, pound them and wear them down so they'll be putting your hands down the stretch.
Chris, I love Twitter because news can come out that Kyrie Irving is going to return on Thursday night, and then Kyrie Irving can go on Twitter and say, I hate to dwindle the news, as he put it, but he's not coming back tonight. You had reported in the offseason that a January return was likely. We keep getting closer to that. How close are we to Kyrie coming back? Could it happen by Christmas?
Yeah, no, I actually reported that it was a chance it could extend out to January.
Yeah.
I've always thought myself that it would be sometime around mid-December. But no, I think Kyrie is going to be back for that Sunday game against Philadelphia. Make all the sense in the world, build his confidence up, what better team to build the confidence up than the 76ers? And then you get a couple of games under your belt, you get the Knicks. After that, a couple of games under your belt before that big Christmas game against the Golden State Warriors. To return for this game, even though there was a chance that he would play in this game, but to return for this game tonight against OKC, that's a daunting task, man. For a guy who has, worked as hard as he has, and for a guy who has been out as long as he has, confidence is probably the most important thing once you initially return. And Kyrie, he's definitely a star in this league, but I don't know if you want to test your confidence on the Russell Westbrook. You want to start things off on the right note. Man, I think Sunday's game is better suited for Kyrie and the Cavs.
So, Chris, you don't think it's a time thing? Like Kyrie needs more time to get practice under his belt, to heal his body, to pass any kind of test?
No, I was hearing, and I wrote this last week. He was behind the scenes trying to get the Cavs to activate him last week so he could play. And, I was also told that the Cavaliers are going back and forth with how they're going to handle him once he comes back. I think if Kai came back last week, I think there was a chance they still would have sat him tonight's game. I think you may see a situation where that's how they're rolling them out there. They want to make sure they're still cautious. And this is all about the Cavaliers' approach and how they bring him back. Knowing Kyrie's injury history, they want to make sure they don't do anything to detriment to put this guy in further harm. And I think that's the right approach. It's all about the latter part of the season and postseason run for this team.
Chris, when Iman Shumpert came back against Orlando, he came off the bench. Do you anticipate the Cavs handling that the same way when it comes to Kyrie? And when Kyrie comes back, whether it be Sunday against Philadelphia or against New York or against Golden State, whenever it is, who do you think is going to be, I don't necessarily want to say the odd guy out, but the guy whose minutes get affected the most by his return?
Minutes get affected the most. It might be, obviously, Jared Cunningham. He's going to go not playing at all.
Yeah.
That's the obvious one. But, it might be Mo Williams. It might be Mo Williams for a chance, even though Mo is falling into that role of, being a scorer off the bench. Black loves him some Matthew Dellavedova, and he has every right to love him. I don't know if he feels well. He said he does feel comfortable playing those two together in the backcourt in the second unit. But sooner or later, something is going to have to give. I don't know if it's initially to answer your question, Fedor, but something is going to have to give as far as the minutes between Dellavedova and Mo, because we've seen a lot where Dellavedova is finishing games. He's just comfortable with eligibility. You know, he doesn't make many mistakes. Mo Williams, he's an aggressive player, and once he's an aggressive player, he's prone to turn the ball over here and there, probably a little bit too much. And you know, when every possession is valuable, especially when you get to those important games, man, it's crucial to have somebody in there that you can trust. So I don't know initially to answer your question, Fedor, about whose minutes will be affected, but I think down the road, you know, Dellavedova or Mo, somebody's going to have to give. As of right now, the way things are playing out right now, it looks like Mo's situation is going to probably dwindle.
Chris, last question real quick. How long is Iman Shumpert going to be out with that groin injury?
I think he'll be back. I think he'll be back Sunday. The Cavs, you know, after the game. So first of all, you know, Shumpert was just looking. He was just not responding. He was just sitting there in his locker stall, staring at the ground, just pissed. Obviously, the way he came back, fighting back to call back from that wrist injury, and then the sucker in the second game of the season, definitely a blow. But it wasn't anything severe. And the Cavs made it clear that, you know, there's nothing wrong. There's really nothing wrong. There's a strain growing. I think he'll be back. I think he'll be back Sunday.
All right, Chris Haynes, our Cavaliers beat reporter. Thanks for the time, Chris.
Anytime. Take care.
Interesting game tonight. No Shump, though, obviously. No Kyrie Irving. It's always hard to judge this team. But that being said, you only get 2 of these against Oklahoma City. So give me like one thing to really watch for in this game.
The thing that I'm going to be looking for is whether the Cavs can continue to defend at a high level without Iman Shumpert. I think everybody understands that he's, besides LeBron, the best defensive player that the Cavs have out there on the perimeter. And now you're playing against Oklahoma City, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook. I'm curious if other guys can step up in the absence of Shump and show that they can defend at the same level that they defended the other night against Boston and then Friday against Orlando, because I think Iman Shumpert is going to be a very, very difficult guy to count on throughout the regular season and even into the playoffs. He's an injury-prone guy. It's frustrating, but he's never played a full regular season in his career, and I want to see somebody else step up and bring that kind of toughness, that kind of energy that they're not going to have because he's not going to be out there.
Yeah, you tweeted it the other night. The Cavs have a lot of guys that have a lengthy injury history.
Yes.
All right, let's switch gears and talk some Indians baseball. They're out there making moves, are the Cleveland Indians. We bring in our Indians beat reporter, Paul Hoynes. Hoynesy, how are you?
Hi, guys.
Doing all right, Hoynesy. Let's start with Todd Frazier. He's going to the White Sox. What was the holdup on the Indians? Was it really, Cody Allen?
I think, initially the Reds asked for, either Salazar or Cody Allen. The Indians said no, and then it kind of turned into a prospect type deal. And although the Reds never really said, okay, we got a deal, this is what we want, they made it clear that they needed Bradley Zimmer, one of the Indians' number 1 picks, or Clint Frazier, another number 1 pick, in any deal they made, and they wanted, a couple other guys as well. So, it just didn't seem like, they could ever match up. The Indians tried to bring a third team into it, as eventually what happened with the White Sox, Dodgers, and Reds, but they just couldn't get the right pieces aligned.
All right, Hoynesy, so where do the Indians go from here? Because I don't want you telling me that the Indians feel like the guys that they picked up in Rajai Davis and Napoli are going to be the moves this offseason to move on from Todd Frazier here.
Yeah, I know. It's this might be it. Unless they can pull a rabbit out of their hat. I think their main goal, I think, going into the winter was to hold on to this rotation unless they completely got blown away. They think, Napoli and Rajai Davis, and I think our stopgaps, will allow them to do that until they, come across a deal that they can't say no to. So, I think they should do more. I think a lot of people think they should do more. This is an offense that needs help. And, Napoli, 2 years ago, yes. 3 years ago, yes. And I like Davis. I know he's 35, but he's always played lights out against the Indians. I think he's an energy guy. He's a good guy. I think, he can run the bases. He can play 3 outfield positions. I think he's going to help, but those are obviously 1-year deals, short-term help.
Hoynes, when the Indians went out and signed Mike Napoli, I decided to take a look at their roster, kind of see what they had, and I got to the outfield section. It scared me a little bit. Obviously, they added Davis, but right now, without Michael Brantley, from an offense perspective, this outfield scares me. Is this essentially what the Indians are going to roll with for the first couple months?
Dan, right now it looks like it. It scares me too. I mean, you're talking about Abraham Almonte, Rajah Davis, Lonnie Chisenhall. You've got Sands, you've got Ramsey, you've got your Tyler Nakin. A couple kids that are on the 40-man. Maybe one of these guys, Clint Frazier or Zimmer, come up and have kind of blow the doors off of things in spring training and make the club. But still, that's not going to get you where you want to go. I don't think. You don't want to put your top guys in a position where they've got to produce or else right out of the gates. I think they'd rather bring those guys in during the season when they're going well at Columbus or Akron, and mix them in like they've done in the past.
Hoynesy, when you bring up Mike Napoli, how do the Indians view him, and what does that mean for Carlos Santana heading into this season? Well,
I think it means Carlos had better be working at first base right now down in the Dominican. If not, he's going to be the DH. Napoli played over 100 games at first base. He was a Gold Glove finalist in the American League. So I think he's, they view him as an upgrade at first base. Carlos will slip into the DH spot, and obviously he'll play some first base as well. But they were they were down on Carlos. His defense last season. Francona, Terry Francona, who never rips the player publicly, just said if he wants to play more at first base, he's got to work harder at first base. And that was, that kind of just hung in the air when he said that, and it's still hanging there. And I think Napoli probably, if he passes his physical on Friday, if everything's all right, he'll probably be the regular first baseman.
Hoynesy, I guess one angle of these two guys is, they're both older guys, obviously. But they have both won. When this team made the playoffs a couple years ago, they did have strong leadership in the clubhouse. Do these guys maybe help fill a void that they had last season?
Well, I guess so, Dan. But they made a point of the Indians made a point of saying, when they traded, Bourne and Swisher and David Murphy and Brandon Moss, said, hey, this is the core guys. It's their time to step up. It's their time to lead. Brantley and Kipnis and Gomes and all those guys. And so, I don't think these two guys, Davis and Napoli, were brought in to lead, to bring a veteran presence. And of course they do, in a manner of speaking. But I think the Indians, Francona and the front office are looking for some leadership from the guys, the core guys that are in place here.
All right, Paul Hoynes, our Indians beat reporter. Thanks for the time, Hoynesy.
Thanks, guys.
I don't know where Mike Pettin would rank Bud Shaw in his columnist tiers.
I'm afraid to ask.
Maybe we can ask him sometime, but here is Bud Shaw.
All right, well, thank you. Obviously it's been a long season for Mike Pettin, so we should probably forgive him a convoluted answer to a simple question. Asked if Seattle's Russell Wilson was a top 10 quarterback, Pettin gave an answer that came off as a slight. He said Wilson has certainly ascended, that he's productive, and that he wins. But that part of Wilson's success is how well he complements what Seattle wants to do offensively. Wilson happens to be coming off a 4-game stretch in which he's thrown 16 touchdown passes with no interceptions for a passer rating of 145.9 on the average. Because Pettin didn't go all Lou Holtz over Wilson, slobbering him with compliments, and because Pettin is has lost 15 of his last 18 games and looks overmatched, the head coach's words have brought a predictable reaction. Our first commenter believes that Pettine might be correct, but that it's more evidence that the stage is too big for him. Listen, the press conference stage for a 3-10 team is pretty much Wayne's World. Pettine should be holding these pressers over the phone from his basement at this point. I think there are better examples of this stage being too big for him, and that most of them show themselves on the sidelines during games when the clock is draining and the Browns need to strategize. What made Pettine's comments somewhat curious is that they came days before the Browns play Seattle, of course, which is a difficult venue for any visiting team. The Seahawks and Wilson happen to be playing great. Everywhere you look, Seattle has the advantage, quarterback and head coach being near the top of that list. Our next commenter suggests Johnny Manziel will learn from watching Wilson Sunday, and all I can say is good luck with that. He already said this week that he hasn't studied Wilson, or probably anyone else for that matter. Studying is not Johnny's game. The comment goes on to say that Pettine probably won't learn from Pete Carroll. Listen, as a Browns fan, you should want Johnny looking at his Surface tablet between possessions, and you should want Pettine keeping his eyes on the clock. Mike G tells us Jimmy Haslam should attach a shock collar to Pettine and zap him every time he says something stupid. Okay, but candidly, to borrow a word, I don't think the owner who said his front office and head coach had the franchise pointed directionally correct is the best judge of something said that it's stupid. Pettine came around to saying Wilson belongs in the next group of quarterbacks outside the top 3 or 4. The easier answer for him would have been to say, yes, top 10, because that's really what he ended up saying. So maybe Pettine should be smarter. But if anyone thinks that comment is going to be what makes it difficult for the Browns to win Sunday, well, do me a favor, say that out loud while wearing a shock collar, and I'll be happy to zap you. What we shouldn't do is look for ulterior motives for Pettine's response to the question about Wilson. Like this one, suggesting that Pettine is Benedict Arnold intentionally trying to sabotage Manziel.
Oh.
Unless, did you hear Fedor over there?
Jeez.
Unless that's a joke. I hope it is. I mean, think about it. When exactly has Johnny needed anybody else to sabotage Johnny, guys?
What?
Well, I can tell you, I happened to notice the guy that tweeted that out, and you never quite know if he's being serious.
Well, that's why I suggested that maybe it is a joke.
You know what was really concerning, though, that no one is talking about from Pettine's press conference yesterday, is when he went on and on about, you want to try and build a team that minimizes the quarterback, and you want to put weapons around him. And I just thought, you mean like weapons like Dwayne Bowe and Andrew Hawkins and Taylor Gabriel?
Or Darius Jennings.
Terrell Pryor, who was waived yesterday. And I mean, they talk about trying to minimize the quarterback, but they've really done nothing to do that at all in their time here.
Well, hey, Josh Gordon's coming back.
Right, exactly.
But I think that comment from Mike Pettine, it gets to the heart of why fans are so frustrated. Maybe it's not his game management, maybe it's not the win-loss record, but if your overall view of the NFL nowadays is we don't need wide receivers and we're going to minimize the most important position in the NFL, how could you possibly succeed with that plan?
I agree, Chris.
It's not 1980 anymore.
Right. I mean, that's why I think Haslam has to make changes. Yeah. Because if his GM believes this, and his draft picks suggest he does,
right,
and Pettine buys into it, that singing from the same hymnal is not a good thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do, if you don't have the quarterback, you don't have the quarterback. But you better go out and get guys that are going to help the quarterbacks you do have be better. And then you better do everything you can to finally get that quarterback.
Yeah.
That's why you don't take Joey Bosa number 1, guys. Let's just get that out of the way now.
Uh-oh.
You don't take Joey Bosa number 1.
Or you do if there's not a quarterback worthy of the top pick. Obviously, this is a discussion for another day.
All right.
But that's the big discussion. Are you going to pass on a guy that you think can affect the other quarterback for a quarterback that may or may not be the guy? You have to love the quarterbacks,
That's
Dan,
true.
if you're going to pass on a guy like Joey Bosa.
Well, how about
point.
this? If you don't think he's the number 1 guy, Lynch or Goff, why not trade out of that number 1 pick, get more picks, and take Goff 7.
I don't love that because
You don't
you're
love it.
bypassing somebody that could affect the opponent's quarterback. Like, if you don't have a quarterback,
The way Shelton had
you
it?
have
No, I
to-
know. That's
you
not
have
what he
to
was.
get after the other quarterback.
Yeah.
What you do is you take a backup offensive lineman in the first round. That's what you do in this situation. We got like 5
Joe
months.
Thomas may be retiring in
about
3
the
years.
draft.
Better get another left tackle.
You know what you do? You take a tight end because Gary Barton is just going to be gone in 2019. You start preparing for the future.
We've seen
Thanks
this
to
all
Tom
before.
Reed, Chris Haynes, and Paul Hoynes for joining us. Of course, Bud Shaw as well. For Chris Fedor, I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.